There are moments in life when the people we love the most become the source of our deepest frustrations. For me, it was the incessant ringing of my phone, a sound that had begun to feel like a persistent reminder of a growing rift between my husband and me. This wasn't about missing a call, it was about missing the point of our relationship. Let me take you back to where it all began. My husband, whom I adored deeply, had a peculiar habit. He would call me from anywhere at any time, as long as he knew I was awake. At first, it felt endearing, a testament to his desire to stay connected throughout the day. But it didn't take long for it to transform into a constant barrage that tested the limits of my patience. I remember the first time I realized this was becoming an issue. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the leaves danced whimsically as they fell from the trees. I was cozily nestled on our living room couch, a book in one hand and a cup of tea in the other, savoring a rare moment of tranquility. My husband had gone out to run some errands and had left his phone in the car. Within minutes of stepping out, he returned to retrieve it and, as was his custom, called me to inform me he'd found it. "I found my phone!" he exclaimed, his voice brimming with an unusual excitement for such a mundane discovery. "That's great, honey," I replied, masking my bemusement with a chuckle. "You could have just told me when you got back inside." "I know, but I wanted to let you know right away," he said, as if that explained everything. It was a small thing, easily brushed off with a smile and a shake of the head. But it was only the beginning. Over time, these calls became more frequent and less significant. He'd call to tell me he was on his way home, then call again to let me know he was stuck in traffic. We talked about it several times, each conversation ending with a promise to cut back on the non-urgent calls, but old habits die hard and his resolve would crumble within days. The real turning point came one lazy afternoon when I decided to take a much-needed nap. I remember the feeling of sinking into our soft, inviting bed, the cool sheets enveloping me like a gentle embrace. Sleep came easily, a welcome escape from the noise of the world, or so I thought. I awoke to the relentless buzzing of my phone, the screen flashing my husband's name over and over again. 27 missed calls. My heart raced, panic momentarily seizing me as I imagined all the possible emergencies that could prompt such urgency. I called him back immediately, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's wrong?" I asked breathlessly, bracing myself for bad news. "You didn't answer your phone," he replied, his tone accusatory. "I called so many times." "I was napping," I said, the relief of knowing there was no emergency quickly replaced by irritation. "Is everything okay?" "I just wanted to remind you to answer your phone. There could have been an emergency." I was speechless. There was no emergency, no urgency, just a reminder that I should always be available just in case. That day marked a shift in my perspective. I began to see the constant calls not as a sign of affection, but as an intrusion on my time and space. But the real challenge lay in addressing this with him, especially when a part of me understood his fear. What if there really was an emergency one day and I missed it? It was a difficult balance to strike between being available in times of genuine need and maintaining my own boundaries. Fast forward to today, and the pattern had only worsened. He'd gone to the gym for his usual evening workout, a routine that should have offered us both a bit of personal time. I was catching up with a friend over the phone, a conversation I'd been looking forward to for weeks. It felt so good to reconnect, to laugh and reminisce about old times. But, as if on cue, my phone began to buzz incessantly. 5 calls from him, all in quick succession, breaking the rhythm of my conversation and my patience. I could sense my friend's curiosity on the other end of the line as I silenced the calls, choosing to finish our chat before addressing whatever non-urgent matter he wanted to discuss. I knew he would be upset, but I also knew I needed to prioritize my own needs just this once. When I finally called him back, his anger was palpable. "Why didn't you answer?" he demanded, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "I could have been in an emergency situation and someone would have needed to reach you." "I was on a call with a friend," I explained, trying to remain calm. "It was only 15 minutes. What was so urgent?" His reason, as expected, was anything but. He wanted advice on a workout machine he was unfamiliar with. A quick search online or a glance at the videos I'd sent him could have easily sufficed. Yet, he chose to rely on me, to pull me into his world at the expense of my own. It was a pattern that had become all too familiar. His dependence on me for trivial matters that could easily be resolved independently. I tried to explain this to him, to bridge the gap of misunderstanding that had grown between us. But instead of listening, he blocked me mid-conversation, cutting off my words with a click. He even stopped sharing his location on the Find My app, a gesture that felt both petty and hurtful, a silent protest against my perceived neglect. As the hours ticked by, I found myself alone with my thoughts, the weight of our unresolved conflict heavy on my shoulders. He didn't return home until well past midnight, slipping into bed at an hour when the world was still and silent, save for the gentle rustle of the wind outside our window. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind a whirlpool of confusion and hurt. What had gone so wrong between us that something as trivial as a phone call could drive such a wedge? In the quiet darkness, I reflected on our relationship. We had always been close, our lives intertwined in a way that felt comforting rather than constricting. But somewhere along the line, that closeness had turned into a dependency that neither of us had anticipated. His need for constant reassurance had begun to suffocate me, while my need for space clashed with his desire for connection. I knew we needed to find a middle ground, a way to communicate that respected both of our needs. The challenge lay in convincing him to see things from my perspective, to understand that my failure to answer a call didn't equate to a failure in our relationship. It was simply a part of navigating life as individuals within a partnership. As dawn broke, bringing with it the soft hues of a new day, I resolved to have one more honest conversation with him. I wanted to find a way to reassure him without losing myself in the process. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. The phone between us was no longer just a device. It had become a symbol of the distance that had crept into our marriage. I hoped that with time and understanding, we could learn to hear each other in the silence between the rings. And so, that's where we are now. Two people trying to find a way back to each other in a world that demands constant connectivity. It's a journey that requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to change. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that love is worth the effort. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, I lay there contemplating the path forward. The room was still, save for the soft breathing of my husband beside me. There was a serenity in those moments before he awoke, a chance for me to gather my thoughts and prepare for the conversation I knew we needed to have. It wasn't just about the calls anymore. It was about understanding each other's needs, respecting boundaries, and finding a way to coexist without feeling smothered or neglected. I knew I couldn't change him, nor did I want to. What I wanted was to find a balance, a way to honor both his needs and mine. As he stirred awake, I turned to him, my mind already rehearsing the words I wanted to say. But before I could speak, he broke the silence. "I'm sorry about last night," he said, his voice groggy but earnest. I overreacted. His admission caught me off guard, and for a moment I simply stared at him, struck by the vulnerability in his eyes. It was a small gesture, but it was a start, a crack in the armor of frustration that had built up between us. "I'm sorry too," I replied, reaching for his hand. "I didn't mean to make you feel unimportant or ignored. I just needed a little time for myself, and I think we need to talk about how to manage this better." He nodded, and there was a moment of silence where we both seemed to be gathering our thoughts, trying to find the right words that would bridge the gap between us. "I know I can be a bit much sometimes," he admitted, looking down at our intertwined hands. "I guess I just like knowing you're there, just a call away. It's comforting." His words resonated with me, and I realized that at the heart of his calls was not just a desire for attention, but a deeply rooted need for connection and reassurance. It was something I hadn't fully appreciated until now. "I understand," I said softly, "and I want to be there for you, but I also need you to understand that I have my own space and time that I need to preserve. Maybe we can set some guidelines or find another way to communicate when it's not urgent." He seemed to mull over my suggestion, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, considering the possibilities. "What if we have a system?" he proposed. "Like, if it's really urgent, I'll text 911 or something, so you know it's important. Otherwise, I can wait for your call back." The idea seemed like a good compromise, a way to ensure that urgent matters could be addressed without the constant pressure to be immediately available for every call. "I think that could work," I agreed, "and maybe we can also set aside a specific time each day to catch up, so we both feel connected." He smiled at that, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and seemed to lift some of the tension that had settled between us. "I'd like that," he said, squeezing my hand gently. As we talked, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a step in the right direction. We were both willing to make changes, to meet each other halfway, and build a foundation of understanding that could support us moving forward. That day, as we went about our routines, there was an unspoken agreement between us, a newfound respect for each other's time and space. The phone calls became less frequent, more intentional, and when they did happen, they were laced with a sense of mutual respect and understanding. It wasn't just about managing phone calls. It was about finding a balance in our lives, learning to communicate in a way that honored both our needs and strengthened our relationship. It was a process, one that required patience and empathy, but it was one we were both committed to. In the weeks that followed, the changes we implemented, it began to take root. There were still moments of frustration and miscommunication, but they were tempered by the knowledge that we were both working towards the same goal. Our relationship was evolving, growing stronger with each conversation and compromise. And as I lay in bed at night, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We were finding our way back to each other, learning to navigate the complexities of love and connection in a world that often demanded more than we could give. It was a journey, but one worth taking, and together, we were making it work. As the days turned into weeks, our new system of communication slowly began to weave itself into the fabric of our daily lives. The frantic, incessant calls that once punctuated my day like a relentless drumbeat slowly diminished, replaced by a calmer, more deliberate dialogue. Each morning, after the alarm clock had roused us from sleep, we'd spend a few moments just talking, not about logistics or schedules, but about things that mattered. Our dreams, our worries, our plans for the future. There was a subtle shift in our dynamic, a gentle easing of the tension that had once hung between us like a dense fog. I found myself looking forward to these conversations, to the quiet moments of connection that had been missing for so long. It was as if we were rediscovering each other, peeling back the layers of frustration and misunderstanding to reveal the love that had always been there, waiting patiently beneath the surface. But, of course, change rarely comes without its challenges. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Instinctively, I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat when I saw his name. Old habits die hard, I suppose. Despite our progress, there was still a part of me that tensed at the sight of his number, a residual echo of the anxiety that had once consumed me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of our agreement, the promise we had made to each other to respect boundaries and prioritize communication. With a steady hand, I placed the phone back on the counter, letting it ring out. It wasn't urgent, I told myself. It could wait. After all, we had our system now. If it was truly important, he'd find a way to let me know. A few minutes later, as I was chopping vegetables, the phone buzzed again, this time with a text. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up the device, a small smile tugging at my lips when I saw the message. "Just wanted to see how your day was going. No rush, call when you can. Love you." Simple yet thoughtful. A reflection of the changes we were both striving to make. I replied with a quick message, letting him know I was in the middle of cooking but would call him back as soon as I was done. There was a warmth in that exchange, a sense of mutual understanding that had been absent in our interactions for far too long. It felt good, knowing we were on the same page, working together to build something stronger than before. As I continued preparing dinner, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. It hadn't been easy, and there were still hurdles to overcome, but there was a newfound resilience in our relationship, a determination to make it work despite the challenges. We were learning, growing, and adapting, and in doing so, we were rediscovering the joy of being together, of sharing our lives in a way that felt meaningful and fulfilling. Later that evening, as we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily between us, punctuated by laughter and shared stories. It was a reminder of why we had fallen in love in the first place, of the connection that had drawn us together and continued to bind us despite the difficulties. We were finding our rhythm again, a harmony that resonated in the quiet moments and echoed in the spaces between words. And so, as the days turned into months, our relationship continued to evolve. We weren't perfect, and there were still times when old habits threatened to resurface, but we were committed to making it work. Each day brought new challenges and new opportunities to grow, and we faced them together, hand in hand with a renewed sense of purpose and love. Looking back on those early days, I realized how much we had both changed, how much we had learned about ourselves and each other. It was a journey, one that required patience, empathy, and a willingness to adapt, but it was a journey worth taking. We were building something stronger, something lasting, and in doing so, we were finding our way back to each other, one day at a time. As our lives settled into this new rhythm, I began to notice subtle changes in how we both approached each day. The morning routine, once marked by hurried exchanges and rushed departures, had transformed into something more akin to a cherished ritual. We'd sip our coffee together, the steam curling upward as if to carry away the remnants of past tensions, and talk about whatever crossed our minds. Sometimes our conversations would wander into the trivial, like the latest show we were watching, while other times they would delve into deeper waters, touching on our hopes and fears. It was during one of these mornings that I found myself opening up about something that had been quietly gnawing at me. "You know," I began, hesitating for a moment as I steered my gaze out the window, watching the world wake up with us. "I've realized how much I've missed these moments. Just us without the distractions." He looked up from his phone, where he had been reading the news, and I could see the understanding in his eyes. "I've missed them too," he replied, setting the phone aside. "I think I got so caught up in everything else that I forgot how important this is." His words struck a chord within me, a reminder of why we had embarked on this journey of change. It wasn't just about reducing the number of calls or finding a balance that worked for us. It was about reclaiming the time and space we needed to truly connect. Despite the progress we were making, there were still moments when the old patterns threatened to creep back in. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself alone in the living room, the quietness of the house wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. It was a rare moment of solitude, and I relished in it, letting my thoughts drift and settle wherever they pleased. But then, my phone buzzed with a text. It was him, sending a picture of a new gadget he was excited about. A part of me tensed, the old habit of feeling obligated to respond immediately rearing its head. Yet, instead of replying right away, I paused, allowing myself a moment to truly consider my response. I realized then that this was what we had been working towards, creating a space where immediate responses weren't demanded, where we could engage on our own terms. I could feel the tension easing as I typed a quick reply, assuring him that I'd check it out when he got home and that I was looking forward to hearing all about it in person. Later that night, as we curled up on the couch together, he launched into an animated explanation of his latest tech find. I listened, genuinely interested, and as he spoke, I found myself smiling, not just at his enthusiasm, but at the ease with which we had settled into this new phase of our relationship. It wasn't always perfect. There were still times when the demands of life threatened to pull us in separate directions, but we were learning to navigate those moments with grace and understanding. The calls, once a source of frustration, had become a tool for connection, a way to reach out and share in each other's lives without overshadowing them. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the soft hum of the city outside, I reflected on how far we had come. We were still on this journey, still learning and growing, but we were doing it together, and that made all the difference. The path we were on was one of discovery, not just of each other, but of ourselves, and the possibilities that lay ahead felt both exciting and reassuring. In the glow of the dimmed bedroom lights, I turned to him, watching as he drifted into sleep beside me. There was a quiet contentment in knowing that we were both committed to this journey, to building something lasting and meaningful. It was a reminder that love, like any worthwhile endeavor, required effort and patience, but the rewards were worth every moment of struggle. As I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of peace settle over me, a gentle reassurance that we were on the right path, walking it hand in hand, ready to face whatever came our way. And in that moment, I knew that we were not just finding our way back to each other. We were finding our way forward together. The next morning dawned with the gentle hues of sunrise seeping through our bedroom curtains. I awoke to the familiar sound of birds chirping outside, a natural symphony that accompanied the gradual lightening of the sky. I turned to see him still sleeping soundly beside me, his face relaxed in peaceful slumber. It was one of those moments where I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me, a sense of appreciation for the small, quiet instances of life that grounded us in each other's presence. As I slipped out of bed, Careful not to disturb him, I felt an odd mix of warmth and anticipation. Our journey had been a series of steps, some tentative and others more assured, but each one had brought us closer to understanding and rediscovering the rhythm of our lives together. I headed to the kitchen, the familiar ritual of brewing coffee easing me into the day. The aroma soon filled the air, and I stood by the window with my mug in hand, watching the neighborhood come alive. It was a comforting scene, one that mirrored the newfound tranquility in our relationship. Yet, there was a part of me that remained vigilant, aware of the delicate balance we were striving to maintain. The past had taught us hard lessons, and I was determined not to let complacency undo our progress. He joined me a short while later, his hair tousled from sleep, a sleepy smile playing on his lips. "Morning," he murmured, reaching for his own cup of coffee. We fell into easy conversation, our words flowing with the simplicity that comes from knowing someone so intimately. We talked about our plans for the day, our voices blending into the morning's quiet. As we lingered over breakfast, I found myself reflecting on the nature of our communication. It wasn't just about the calls or the messages, it was about the connection that lay beneath them. We had learned to listen more deeply, to hear what wasn't being said, and to understand each other's needs without the clutter of constant noise. The day unfolded with its usual routine, yet there was a subtle shift in the way we moved through it. We had become more attuned to each other, more present in the moments we shared. It was a small but significant change, one that reminded me of the progress we had made. Later that afternoon, I found myself thinking about the path that had brought us here. It wasn't without its challenges, but those struggles had shaped us, carving out a space where we could be vulnerable, honest, and open with each other. I realized that the calls, once a source of tension, had become emblematic of something deeper, a desire to connect, to bridge the distances that life sometimes created between us. As evening approached, we decided to take a walk together, a simple act that had become one of our favorite ways to unwind. The air was crisp, the sky painted in shades of twilight as we strolled through the neighborhood. We walked in companionable silence, the sound of our footsteps mingling with the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. At one point, he reached for my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. I glanced at him, a smile tugging at my lips as I squeezed his hand gently. "Remember when we used to do this all the time?" I asked, my voice soft in the evening air. He nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Yeah, I do. I think we forgot how much we needed it." His words resonated with me, a reminder of the importance of the little things, the walks, the talks, the moments of quiet connection that had become the backbone of our relationship. It was these moments that had helped us rebuild, that had allowed us to find our way back to each other. As we continued walking, I felt a sense of gratitude for the journey we were on. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't always easy, but it was ours, and that made it all the more meaningful. We were learning to navigate the complexities of life together, one day at a time, and in doing so, we were discovering the strength and resilience that lay within us both. Returning home, we settled into our evening routine with a newfound sense of ease. There was a comfort in the familiarity of it all, a reassurance that we were moving forward step by step in the right direction. And as the day drew to a close, I found myself looking forward to the future, to the days and weeks and months that lay ahead. In the quiet moments before sleep claimed us, I lay there beside him, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing as a soothing presence. It was in these moments, surrounded by the gentle darkness of night, that I knew we were not just finding our way back to each other. We were building something new, something lasting, and for that I was profoundly grateful. With a contented sigh, I closed my eyes, allowing the peace of the moment to envelop me. We had come so far, and there was still so much ahead of us, but we were ready, together, for whatever the future held. Subscribe for more stories.